All right, third grade friends, go ahead and bring your math journals to the carpet. I'm going to ask that you please place them on the floor beside you, okay? Now, we just did a math investigation, and that's about what we're going to talk about today. Can anybody tell me what we just did in our math investigation? Okay, we used pencils. What did we use our pencils for? We used them to measure our desks. Now, what were some of the numbers or lengths of your desk? Yeah, 3, 5, 2, anybody else? 8? Now, why do you think you all had a different number? I mean, you all used pencils, so why do you think you came up with a different number? Yes, it's because your pencils were different lengths, right? I gave some of you really short ones, some long ones. Now, when we think of those pencils, I want you to think of a non-standard form of measurement, okay? We now use standard forms of measurements all over the world. We use customary here in the United States, and they use the metric system in other places all over the world as well. And throughout the next couple of weeks, we're going to be discussing customary as well as metric, okay? So before we get started, there hasn't always been a standard form of measurement. The Egyptians used the cubit to measure. It was the tip of their finger to their elbow. Could you imagine measuring the pyramids with a cubit? There was also the digit, that would be the top of your index finger to the bend. Now when I think about that, what use of measurement am I going to do? What do you think? Okay, centimeters, maybe. Can we think of something maybe a little bit bigger? You can still find it on a ruler. Yes, an inch. You also used to see a measurement called the palm, which would be your palm, and the span, which would be from your finger to finger. Now, could you imagine measuring things? If you were going to build a house and your dad wanted it 3,200 spans, would you want to use your hand or your dad's hand? Okay, your dad's hand, right? Because yours would be so little you might end up with a playhouse or a doghouse. You never know, right? So we've moved into a standard form of measurement, and today that's what we're really going to get into, okay? So let's discuss some things that you've measured in your house or in this classroom. What are some things you've measured? Okay, you've measured the wall. What measurement do you use? Do you use length, width, height? What do you use? You'd use height, okay. What about a rug? What could you do with a rug? You could measure the length of the rug, yes. What else? Okay, the width of the rug. So today we've got a little warm-up before we get started. I want you to think about this milk truck, and I'm going to get this milk truck up here, okay? And I want to put up my prompt. Okay. So suppose a truck carrying a huge tank of milk was parked in the parking lot, and we're going to say it's in the parking lot outside of the school. Which measurements could we use to tell us about this truck? And there are more than one way to look at this truck. So who can give me some ideas of how we can look at this truck? Okay. The length of the truck? Yes, that's a great one. Anybody else? Okay, how wide the truck is, the width of the truck. Anybody else? What do you think? Yeah, the height of the truck. So we can look at the width, we can look at the height, and we can look at the length. Now, what measurements what tools are we going to use? Okay, we could use a ruler, we could use a yardstick, or we could use a tape measure. Now in this truck's case, which one are we going to use? Would we use a ruler, or which one would be probably more effective? Yeah, we'd probably use the tape measure here, okay? Now let's think of some other things. I want you to think about the distance that the truck drove. Is that a way of measurement? Let's say the truck started in Glendive and it went all the way to Sydney. Okay? What are we measuring there? We're measuring mileage, yes. And how would we figure that out? On the odometer? Yeah, that's great. That one's a little difficult, right? What other things could we think of? So the truck has now taken off from Glendive, and it's on its way to Sydney, and it's going to park in our parking lot. What's another way of measurement we can think of? What do you think? Often people don't think that this is a use of measurement, but it is. It keeps us on schedule throughout the day, that we're not running late. What do you think? A clock, yes, but what are we measuring? If we're using a clock, what are we measuring? What do you think? Yes, time. That is great. So we are measuring time. So the amount of time the truck has been on the road, and we would use a clock. Now I want you to think of a few other ways that we can look at this truck. What do you think? How heavy the truck is? Yeah, and what's that called? What would we be doing there? We would be measuring the what? The weight. Very good. We'd be measuring the weight. And how would we measure the weight? By using a scale. Can we weigh ourselves? Yeah, so what are we going to probably use here to weigh? You could use pounds. What's another way we could measure? Tons. Yeah, I bet this truck probably is closer to a couple tons rather than a couple of pounds, right? And let's think of one more way that we can measure this truck. You guys have done a great job so far. Let's think of the milk tank, okay? What is in there? There's milk, so it's a liquid. Can we measure that liquid? Yeah, we could measure the capacity of the milk tank. And what are we going to use to measure this milk tank? What do you think? A cup? Well, would you want to use a cup? Or is there something bigger we could use? Let's think. We can go to the store. Milk comes in this. It's called the half gallon, yeah. Think bigger. A gallon, yes. So we could measure the capacity of this milk tank by using a gallon, okay? Now, how many of you, when you sat down at the carpet here, thought that you'd be measuring this truck in all of these different ways? So measurement really is amazing. And today we're going to start our adventure on our measurement unit. So what I'm going to have you do is go back to your seat, and we're going to begin to discuss the ruler.